And we are back. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn-free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the Worldwide Coalition Network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at Coalition_radio, and of course the mothership at coalitionradio.us, where links exist to our YouTube page, our podcast page, and of course our new Liberty News, Civil Liberty News page, where links to organizations like the American Civil Liberties Union, the folks from Goldwater who we just had on, will be published in real time to continue to disseminate information about the fields of liberty, the battles of liberty for your own personal self-ownership around the nation. So a subject, an area that we have covered extensively over the last, say, year, has been the latest in our version of hashtag 38s. And of course we are referring to hashtag 38 Towers, hashtag Fane Towers. This past week, some rather disturbing news came to light. For many of us, we've pointed, number one, to the issues surrounding local control and zoning issues and quality of life issues around the Fane Towers. For other folks, like myself, I've focused nearly obsessively on government subsidies. It's my contention, for example, that TSAs are not okay, because they're given to a wide range of folks, does not eliminate the notion and the fact that you are artificially subsidizing private businesses at taxpayers' expense. In fact, it can be argued that in certain cases, you've got taxpayers paying taxes to subsidize their competition. In a true free market, which is what we so desperately need here in Rhode Island, buildings should be, built on their own merit. I hate taxes. I truly believe taxation is theft. But in the meantime, as we try to find our way to a libertarian paradise where we eliminate government, we need to at least promote taxpayer equity. And someone who is building and rehabbing a handful of triple deckers on the south side should not have to pay a higher rate of tax, or in this case taxes above zero, when individuals by the name of Fane and some other ones here in this part of town seemingly get a free ticket, a subsidy, if you will, by not having to do that. On top of that, there is ample discussion about other taxpayer subsidies at the state level to Fane Towers. So in light of that, I've brought back one of our frequent offenders, and of course her name is Sharon Steele. She's first of all the president of the Jewelry District, and has been fundamental in opposing this abomination as it appears to be, lurching its way to the finish line, until we heard this week that there are issues. Now, full disclosure, I reached out to a number of folks today. I reached out to the I-195 Commission, and at press time, if you will, the start of the show, they had not responded to a couple of my questions, which I had elaborated earlier. In fairness, Mr. Bellini reached out to me, and he, of course, is a paid representation in terms of public relations for the Fane Tower. I've been granted an opportunity to sit with him this week coming up and to have kind of a friendly, Jersey-style friendly, back and forth with him. And I look forward to that. I'm glad we finally had a chance to talk earlier today. But by and large, when it came from the governmental side of the equation, I got 0.0. A lot of very well-meaning, very polite people. But in one case this afternoon, I actually spoke with senior management at the I-195. Turns out they inadvertently answered the phone. And then they realized they were talking to someone like me. And rather than just simply answer my question, they referred me to, again, a PR professional. And just an editorial note, this is not my words, not the words of my guest. I find it highly disturbing in this day and age when a taxpayer simply can't call a governmental agency and get an answer, that somehow public relation firms have moved from organizations that explained and amplified to organizations that have become gatekeepers. And we all, as a culture, we suffer from that. So, Sharon, welcome back.
Thank you, Pat.
Some big doings this week.
Correct.
I want to be the first to announce that the Coalition is going to be holding a bake sale this week in order to help Mr. Fane raise the $300,000. It'll be up in North Cumberland at a location to be disclosed. But as the kids say, my wife is a hella cook, and we're going to put on some goodies so that we can help Mr. Fane raise his $300,000. What in the hell is going on? The guy's getting in line for what, $3 billion? A slice of the universe in order to build this building, and he can't come up with 300 large?
Apparently not, is the answer. But perhaps it would be helpful if I set the stage a bit.
I want, if you can, be so good as to give us a couple of minutes of sort of rehash the basics.
Okay.
We'll call it Fane 101.
Okay.
And then bring us to where we are right now and where you think we're going. So I'm going to turn it all over to you.
Thank you.
That's the kind of guy I am.
You are. You're a great guy. Okay, so here's where we are. A term sheet with conditions, lots of conditions, was signed on the 31st of January of 2018. I'd just like to remind people that this is October of 2019.
Halloween is upon us.
Very much upon us.
Could I go as the Fane Towers for Halloween?
I bet you might have some competition.
Oh, okay.
It could be quite the costume this year.
All right.
Okay. So, the subject du jour is the TSA, commonly known as the Tax Stabilization Act. Okay.
And maybe let's refresh for even taking a step back further.
Okay.
Let's explain what Fane Towers is for someone who might be new to the community, not have been focused on this. They might live in a different part of Rhode Island, if you could.
Okay, so now we need to go back to the fourth quarter of 2016,
Okay.
when Mr. Fane came to town. And he told us that we needed, I remember vividly, the very first meeting, the I-195 Commission meeting, and we introduced ourselves at the end of it, and we had a little chat. And Mr. Fane looked at me and he said, I'm going to put Providence on the map. And I said, Mr. Fane, I think you're a little late. Roger Williams did that in 1636. Mm-hmm. And then he said, you need an iconic building. And I said, sorry again, Mr. Fane. We have the Superman building. And it is known far and wide. Mm-hmm. And I said, would you like to go for number 3? And he didn't answer me. Okay. So Mr. Fane came to town and told us that we needed a 46-story luxury condominium building because if he built it, they would come. Now, I'm not sure who they was or is or are, but to date, we have not seen a marketing study. We have not seen an absorption study. We have not seen one lick of, shall we say, cold hard facts to explain why this building, luxury housing, in a city where the median income is 40 G's, okay, why we need this building and why it needs to be 46 stories when the height limit, based upon the comprehensive plan that dates back to the beginning of 2015, says that 100 feet is the lit. So
now,
that's where we came from.
Right. And a comprehensive plan, who establishes a comprehensive plan?
Well, it was about 3 years in the making, and the planning department of the city of Providence brought together everyone in Providence, all the neighborhoods, all the associations, private, public, quasi-public, all the experts, Chicago, New York, Boston, to talk about what is happening in urban development. Mm-hmm. And we literally heard best practices from people all over the country. Experts who have been doing this all their lives. Project for Public Spaces in New York, okay, the Kents. I mean, just really amazing people. Bruce Katz, who will be back again this week. These are people who specialize in this. And we heard that the important natural resources we have here start with the river. Water, very important, no matter where you are. Okay, think of Paris, think of Amsterdam, think of every major city in the world and a gorgeous, beautiful river, source of life. Okay, so we start at the river and we literally develop around it. We take advantage of our history of historic preservation, and we build from the river at scale, and we move out toward the highway so that the highest buildings would be literally adjacent to the highway. That's what we learned. And that was the basis for the comprehensive plan that sets everything in place moving forward for zoning, planning, etc.
Right.
Enough?
Pretty good backdrop. You paint a pretty good picture.
Okay. So, signed this document, lots of conditions. Okay. Fast forward, we have gone through many of these, shall we say, deadlines. The deadlines literally cover things like when documents are due, when payments need to be made for deposits, etc. So the TSA was a deadline that initially was the 30th of June of this year. So the 30th of June comes and goes, and what is supposed to be submitted at the 30th of June is literally a completed application. And what makes the package complete is that it is accompanied by a non-refundable deposit that is equal to 0.01 or 1/100th of the project cost. Now, the project cost, as we understand it, by Fane's own admission, is $300 million. Apply the formula, looks like $300,000 to me. Okay, so there have been, I'm pretty sure we're on 5 extensions right about now. And those extensions need to be granted by the I-195 Commission. Now, in fairness, in order to literally have a package to submit, you need to have a completed design. Now, the design process has been going on not any longer for Mr. Fane than it goes on for any other applicant on the I-195 corridor, nor for any other applicant that is building new construction in the city of Providence. And for this, I am quite familiar because we have new construction happening in the Jewelry District, both on the 195 corridor and literally on private held properties. Okay, so we get to this point where, let's just say, the commission is starting to get a little tired of the number of extensions that Jeff Padua, Mr. Fane's attorney, is requesting.
What was there any public release of the reasons for the extension so far?
Well, his, shall we say, excuse is that he clearly did not yet have an accepted, approved design plan. Okay? So remember, there's a little stumble that happened here that was self-imposed by the legislature, because remember, they passed some legislation last year that said that any 20-acre parcel in any state, in any municipality in the state of Rhode Island would be subject to new rules and regs as, shall we say, delineated under the steady hand of the Senate President, Dominic Ruggiero. Okay, so when that happened, everybody had to hit the pause button. And so in a meeting that happened a couple of months ago, the commission had to adopt new rules and regulations. So what they did is adopt what we are calling the interim rules and regs. And the fastest and most efficient way to do that is they literally adopted the zoning board of review plans for the city of Providence. So therefore, that was the operating, shall we say, document that was already in place. All of the projects that were in the queue were operating on that basis, and now they all agreed to be governed by these interim plans. But what it did is we lost a little bit of time in the interim.
Yikes.
Yikes. Okay. So let's go to what happened on the 10th, which is the most recent deadline. So the 10th comes, and we learn a few things. As the date approaches, we begin to sort of hear some undercurrents that perhaps there's going to be another extension. We also hear through the grapevine that Mr. Fane's attorney is in contact with the city of Providence, and he is asking whether or not we can, the city would be amenable to a payment plan. Okay? Heretofore unheard of in the world of TSA. So it's bad enough that there have been this number of extensions for TSA, where before there have never been extensions, but now a man who is trying to build a $300 million project is asking for his deposit to be paid over time. Does that strike you as reasonable?
You know, the mayor took a great deal, let's just say he took a beating, when he alluded to the fact that, I'll say he questioned whether or not these towers would ever be built.
And he was not alone.
And he made an allusion to the economic base for building this. And he was, it was ugly. Now, I do not profess to be a fan of this mayor's politics, but it was a statement that might have been intemperate, but this is not a gentleman who's going to overtly lie. He obviously had serious financial concerns, as anyone who's more than a casual observer would, for a luxury building that's going to be transplanted into a lovely, but albeit gritty, New England city that some could say is on the brink of bankruptcy, and others would say is starting to enter its own sort of real estate correction as we speak. Who knows? But how is that possible? I mean, has he had to, and this is for someone who's naive to the details and the steps involved in the process, but has he had to detail at any level what his financing and who is financing this project for the state in the city to engage in this monumental evaluation?
The answer is no. So the I-195 Commission has engaged consultants, as they do through the process for most applicants. And an outfit out of Jersey called the RES Group generally does the financial analysis. And an outfit out of Boston called Util does the sort of design architectural analysis. And so when RES did this analysis, now we are going back to 2017, because remember, that's sort of the genesis of all of this. They made it very clear that there is no way that the finances for this building add up, that the market will not bear the numbers that he needs to deliver to literally not only build this building, but literally lease it and or sell those units. Fact. there has not been a study, literally, put on the table, contributed by the developer to date. But Mr. Fane continues to say, we will build it and they will come. So my answer to that is, I'd like to know the bank that he can sort of enter and say that and get the money he needs to build the building.
Right.
Okay.
And rest assured that, I mean, these are times, or I should say, we're well past that time when someone could, in their own, based on their reputation, walk in and get a check. At least from established real estate financial firms. I mean, the due diligence involved in a project like this is staggering. Everything from environmental issues surrounding potential brownfields in the immediate scope of the project, on up to considerations involving offsets for low-income housing, into considerations for handicapped access, considerations for, again, the number of issues and what it takes to build a big building these days are staggering,
They are.
as are the financial resources necessary to do it.
Correct. And to be serious for a minute, we are entering a market right now that has sort of gone by the buyer's market, right? Rather the seller's market, and we're past neutral, and we are now in a position where if you look at what's happening to big buildings in New York and in Boston, there simply is no longer the demand that was there before, okay? So if you look at the economy at large, it's softening reality. And so that is something that needs to be taken into consideration, because Mr. Fane's building is not the only building. In fact, there are other buildings in the I-195 corridor that are residential buildings that are fully approved. In fact, one of them got final approval this past Monday night at DDRC, the Downtown Design Review Committee, and that is a parcel that's going to have 243 units on it, on parcel 28. So there is competition. There is River House, which is up. There is Station Row, which is up. There is Chestnut Commons, which is in process. And by the way, that is what I'm going to call workforce housing. That's the housing that literally is affordable to the kinds of people who have jobs now in the Innovation and Design District,
Right.
better known as the Jewelry District.
Right, that mid-space, or what constitutes today's mid-space housing.
Correct.
For folks who are professionals in engineering, medicine, the law, finance.
Also, grad programs, fellows, doctors. Remember, we have Brown, we have RISD, we have JWU, we have other university, Roger Williams, Providence College, etc. So yes, we have a huge, shall we say, pool of potentials, but not for luxury housing.
Yeah, I mean, you're a real estate professional, but at least on an anecdotal basis, I can point to luxury housing projects around town that became dorms, because of that shortfall. And you and I've said this to each other, and I'll always harken back to a fellow named Jim Considine, outstanding human being, who spent a lifetime working in Rhode Island, in a variety of restaurant and the hospitality business, if you will, and called Rhode Island a Miller Beer and Budweiser state. We are, and there's nothing wrong with that. And pointed out that there are always folks like me who would come along and try and conflate us into something we're not. But the problem here is that we're looking for tax subsidies for buildings that have real potential for failure in a market that is softening, and with no real track record of those folks in this market, and at the same time, with no clear plan on how they're going to pay for it.
That's the way it looks right now.
That's not a good combination.
It is not a good combination. Now, all I will say to you is, I'd like to say a couple of things.
Sure.
We are not quite as gritty as we used to be, and we have acquired, shall we say, a reputation for being a foodie town. And so we have great wine, and we have great bourbon, and we have lots of other great spirits. And so it isn't just all about beer anymore.
Well, but it also sounds like we're going to need it. But, I spend a lot of time in the city, and I go past the U.S. rubber lofts, and I go past, and I look at the real estate pages, and I see more and more availability of higher income housing. What you're an astute business person. Why should government be looking to subsidize housing for a market that may or may not exist, in direct contrast to letting the market create housing for which there is demand for, which is middle to lower income housing?
Okay, so that's a subject that honestly deserves, an entire program unto itself, because to be serious for a few minutes, it is a problem that exists, and it is getting more and more severe literally by the day. And there is no easy fix, okay? It costs as much to build in Providence as it does in Boston, and yet in Providence, we're lucky if we get a third to a half of what they get in Boston.
Right.
So the subsidies are critical, and in terms of residential versus commercial development, we need both. It's a little bit of the chicken and the egg. Okay, so these are discussions that I have on a regular basis with certain of my friends over at Commerce, and we need both. But it's a balance, and we have to see where the absorption is, what's working, what's not working. And remember, there's a timeline involved with bringing this development here. It doesn't happen overnight.
Right.
So that's the quick answer, but it's not the comprehensive answer.
No, that's fair. That's fair. So here we are at this point in time.
Okay, so here we are. So we are at the 10th, which is the drop dead date. And sure enough, he wants an extension. And so what happens? Bob Davis, who is the chairman of the I-195 Commission, writes a letter to Attorney Padua, who represents Jason Fane, and he says a lot of things. He says that he is going to grant an extension to December 1st. But that is the last extension he is ever going to see for this TSA, right? For the Tax Stabilization Agreement, period.
This is really, 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 really the last one.
Well, let's just say we are going to hold him to this is the really, 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 really last one. How's that?
Okay.
Okay.
Pinky swear?
Pinky swear.
Okay.
Okay. So he sends this letter. And at the very same time, Mr. Padua says, we expect a further extension as the December 1st deadline approaches. It could take several months to obtain construction cost estimates from the general contractor, which would require more time to file the application. Now, Mr. Davis in his letter says, we were surprised to now learn that in your case, you seem to have submitted a design and entertained modifications to that design without such consideration. It concerns us that you seem to be pursuing a major project without the kind of pro forma that would ordinarily be expected. Aha. So that didn't sit really, really well with Dante Bellini, who is the lobbyist spokesperson for the Fane organization. And I quote, he said, "But it is unfortunate that Chairman Davis chose to send a public letter rather than picking up the phone and working through a simple deadline issue that is misplaced to begin with. To set the record straight on the matter of the TSA application," this is all in quotes, "it is in the wrong place in the schedule. This project required a highly negotiated document with hundreds of details and deadlines. The TSA application should have been placed much later in the process." And I say, where was your ace legal team on the 31st of January of 2018 when you signed the document that agreed to these conditions? And what makes you different than the team at Wexford or any other team that has come through the I-195 corridor?
Because this process is,
Anchored in cement.
I was going to say cast in stone. Everyone who's come along, if you want to play ball,
You play by the rules.
right.
Mr. Fane doesn't like rules.
No, and again, and I'm going to invite folks who are supporting the project to, politely point out where I'm wrong in saying this, but it strikes me that on everything from height issues to setbacks to TSAs, we are, because this gentleman is going to walk into town with a boatload of money, we are to throw the rules the hell out and just essentially wing it for the purpose of Fane Towers.
And then Mr. Bellini adds insult to injury. And I quote, "We have been in touch with Secretary Pryor and Chairman Davis, and we hope to work out this detail shortly in a positive and collegial manner." Now, if that's doublespeak for we know a guy who's going to fix this, then I'm here to say I don't think that's happening on this go-round, because he's cried wolf like one too many times. Okay, so let's go through, has anybody ever been given an extension?
And for the record, there were two questions I was seeking to be answered
Okay.
by the 195 Commission today. Number one, has anyone else been granted an exception, an exemption, anything? And number two, what's the record? How many strikeouts are you allowed to have?
Well, I don't know about how many strikeouts this guy's allowed to have, but the answer is nobody has ever been granted an extension, okay? And no one has ever been given a payment plan. No one has even asked, had the, shall we call, unmitigated goal to ask for a payment plan when you are proposing to build a $300 million project.
Yeah.
Okay, so it is exactly what you sort of said. Once again, Fane expects to be treated differently than anyone else has ever been treated in this process. So somebody else from the city council, and I was really happy to see this, Councilman David Salvatore was quoted after he learned of this request for the payment plan, and he says, and I quote, "If Mr. Fane needs a payment plan for his filing fee, which is just a fraction of the cost of the proposed building, then how will he be able to finance the $300 million needed to actually build the Hope Point Tower?" He further says, "Our taxpayers cannot afford to foot the bill if this development fails." Okay. Again, the spokespeople for Mr. Fane say that that he has been subjected to an endless regulatory process. But what's really funny is it is exactly the same process that Wexford Science and Technology went through, and we never heard a word of complaint, not a peep about anything. They put their heads down, they did the deal, they complied with all the deadlines, and built an extraordinary building that is already a success. Do you have any questions at this point?
Nope. I'm ready for the pop quiz.
Okay. The next deadline, believe it or not,
Yeah.
is right around the corner. It is November 1st. And it is the deadline by which Mr. Fane must submit a development plan. And Bob Davis, in that letter, which was rather long, said he must submit a development plan by that date, and that deadline will not be extended.
Is there been any estimate put in right now? Because I think back to recurring projects like the baseball stadium. How much the city has spent
On resources?
on resources dealing with this?
I don't know the answer to that, but you know what? That's a really good question.
Because,
Be nice to get that answer.
Right, because I mean, in the case of the stadium, you had the efforts of my friends over at the Commerce Corporation. But a significant portion of those costs were borne by the developer. In this case, the AAA baseball team. They were the ones who sunk all that money in. Sorry, wasted millions. Alone, advertisements alone, they spent a fortune on. My friends at WPRO, God bless them. But ultimately, that was largely private money. I get the sense now that in the case of a real estate development like this, the city is having to go out of pocket, and the city, because the other issue is there's the financial cost and the psychic cost. Right now, this is a city with challenges, severe challenges, and the two that come to mind immediately are the schools and pensions. And it strikes me that any effort not spent on fixing those two problems is possibly not time well spent. Yet this is being hung across us like that shiny ball. And again, the state, the attorneys show up, the town council meets, the protests are held. Folks are activists in this town, people who care about this town, continue to have their, energies exhausted, as opposed to focusing on productive projects that could bring wealth and opportunity for folks at every income level in this town, or efforts that could be conducted at the schools. Because Lord knows they need as much help as they can get right now. And that's not even being political, it's just common sense. Is there any one champion in city government for this? Or is this just sort of being inflicted upon the city?
Well, I guess it depends where you sit. For Mr. Fane's purposes, he would like us to think that he is an aggrieved party and that he is being subjected to things that no one else was subjected to. Well, frankly...
That sounds like somebody on the national level.
But here's what I want to say to that. If he had just followed the rules,
right,
he would never have been subjected to any of this.
Right.
We begged him to build the building in other places. We even told him where. We even told him that the zoning was already approved. But no, he wants to be where he wants to be because, frankly, he wants to literally, shall we say, take our beloved pedestrian bridge and riverfront park and make it private for all those people who are going to live in all those high rises. And that doesn't sit really well with, shall we say, the citizens of Providence. So we have that deadline. We have another deadline because, remember, there is litigation that is pending. So that suit has a deadline going along swimmingly, and from where we sit, since the law is on our side, we're feeling pretty darn good about it. So the briefing schedule says that, remember, we always go first because we brought it. October 26th is the date by which the briefs must be submitted by Attorney Landry and his team at Blish and Kavanaugh, who represent Mr. Fane and the organization on the zoning matter. Okay? So they are due to Judge Stern, and based upon what we hear from Judge Stern, we will hopefully have a decision by year end. Now, I can tell you that they haven't made any of those deadlines either. So I fully expect that they will be looking for an extension on that one as well. So that's where we sit with Mr. Fane.
So after all this time, all this money, all this energy, we are really no closer at any level to seeing ground broken, if in fact you desire that. Let's just put yourself in the position of the support of the building. There are no jobs lined up. There's nothing. We just have this incredible dance that's taking place at the highest levels of municipal government over, I mean, is this like sort of an imaginary girlfriend?
I don't know if that's the perfect analogy, but it's an analogy. But the reality is, Pat, that from the very beginning, whatever expert, whether in the business community, high finance, the New York markets, whatever, everyone to a person said that this was never going to be built. So at some point, we look at it as basically the fraud that is being perpetrated on the citizens of Providence. Because if history is any guide to the future, why would we expect any kind of different behavior out of the Fane organization than what we have seen thus far?
Are we aware of any other projects they have ongoing?
I don't know of any.
So this, and you know, we're in the realm of conjecture here now, at least on my part. You know, is this a situation where it goes so far, all of a sudden financing becomes an issue, and then a much bigger ask is made of municipal government in order to keep this beautiful project alive, which is going to provide so many jobs?
Well, let me put it to you this way. I don't think there is a stomach left in the city of Providence that would in a million years even think about putting that ask on the table.
Right.
Okay? We are way beyond that in the city of Providence. Okay? So it is going to be a matter of either put your money where your mouth is, or perhaps pick up and say, wasn't meant to be.
Right. Shake hands as friends and move on.
Or move the project somewhere else.
What should be, in your mind, put in that space? What would the community embrace?
We would certainly embrace anything that meets the zoning ordinance, which says it's 100 feet. Now remember, they carved parcel 42, it was the very last parcel they carved out in the I-195 corridor out of P4, which is the big park, right? And it is, let's just say it is an unusual lot, about an acre and a half, and it's kind of a skinny rectangle. And it sits right along Dyer. And if you want to know where the Fane building is, this is actually really, really easy. You go into Wexford, and you get permission to go up to the 7th floor, and you look out, and you have this extraordinary view of the park and the bridge and the east side. And what you are going to see is the parking podium from one end of the Wexford building to the other end of the Wexford building. Okay? What should go there? Something that is more in keeping with the surrounding buildings. Aloft Hotel is building a really fun, modern structure on the corner of Dorrance and Dyer.
Right.
How tall is it? 100 feet. Why did they get all of their approvals? Why are they going in the ground very soon? Because they followed the rules.
The hotel that's being proposed for College Hill,
That's another story.
how big is that going to be?
Too big.
Okay.
I'm going to take a pass on that one because, number one, I don't know a lot about it. Number two, they just last week came before the College Hill Neighborhood Association. I have seen the plans. I think once again it is a struggle because in that case it involves the demolition of 3 historic houses. And that is always a heavy lift.
Right.
And the fact that from a traffic standpoint, that is an extraordinarily tough block.
Right. Did the federal government, when they partnered with Rhode Island to build, or I should say move I-195, was there any thought to this type of residential construction? My understanding, and again, not an expert, I just try to play one on the radio. My understanding was that it was supposed to be an employment-driven facilities. As many, as our governor likes to say, well-paying jobs as possible.
Yep.
Remind folks what the targeted, or at least from what you've been told, targeted post-construction employment population is supposed to be for that building, roughly.
For the Fane Tower?
Yeah.
Oh, next to nothing, because at first it was going to be all rental, then it was going to be all condos. Mm-hmm. Now it may end up being a mix of that, but the irony of it is we are here now with finally a design. I still can't tell you what's going to go on the inside. I can't tell you how many units. I can't tell you how they break out. I can't tell you anything about the inside of that building. I can tell you that in a residential building, you have some service employees, right?
Right.
You will have some sort, they are saying, retail, commercial on the ground level, mm-hmm. but you can't count those as jobs for the tower because those are the restaurants or whatever is going to go into those spaces. But for the building itself, it's got to be under 20.
Wow. There were supposed to be hundreds.
Well, it's the old, you're entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own set of facts. Mm-hmm. And if you speak with the union folk, yes, there'll be lots of jobs in building it. Right. And at the end of that, you're looking at, double hands, and that's it, folks.
Boy, not at all the promise of. It always needs to be restated that, particularly given, well, technically, most older New England cities, that there's a decided paucity of supply of fresh, untouched land, which is a nice way of saying there's really none.
Correct.
And this land was created really out of a combination of federal financing and pixie dust.
That's exactly right. And this is one of the things that people sometimes don't spend a lot of time thinking about. And that is that we have been given in the Jewelry District an extraordinary opportunity, okay? Because when do you ever have that number of acres sort of fall in your lap?
Yeah.
But with that opportunity comes extraordinary and really, really important responsibility.
Right.
And you know what? We have to get it right because we only have one shot. And what goes in the ground today, that's there for the next 100 years.
Yeah, as I pointed out every time you're on, in my personal opinion, what do the kids say, IMHL? We blew it when it came to the 610 corridor. We had an unparalleled opportunity to redefine how people live. We should have come together as a community on that and together figured out a solution. Instead, we're spending billions literally on replicating a failed artery that essentially is turned into an economic Berlin Wall for those parts of Cranston and Providence. Now here we are again. You don't get the tear down. There's no do-overs, no backsies when it comes to an office tower the size of this.
You are absolutely correct. I want to tell you one other deadline that looms, and that is the deadline for SHPO, and that's the State Historic Preservation Officer. And with the original rules and regs that came along with, getting the land from the feds, they were required to do basically a sign-off, a handoff, and that they have to literally ensure that it's a well-designed structure that enhances the value of the surrounding neighborhood, augments the sense of place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that deadline is due on the 26th of this month, okay? And that's a yay or a nay. Do we know how it's going to go? No. The person who is the new SHPO, after Ted Sanderson being there for, let's call it 25, 30 years, is a guy who actually didn't come from here, Paul Lothar. And so no, I'm not betting on where that's going to go. But I will, I want to sort of perhaps end this with something that the people who came to the hearing last Wednesday night, there were 65 people who signed up to speak. We got there at 5 o'clock, didn't walk out of there till 8:30. Well, easily 15 of them left, right? Because, the applicant spent the first hour and a half, got all the time. We were relegated to 2 minutes at the end, and then, the hook came out. But the people who came, the citizens from all over Providence, right, to speak, they care passionately about what happens to this city.
Right.
And they come of their own time because they care and they want us to do the right thing. And the one thing, there was an interview that was done that night, was done by Eli Sherman and Steph Machado. And it was probably the last thing that Mr. Fane said. And they asked him about, how he thinks about, or what he thinks about how people feel about the building. And he said, my advice is, if you don't like the way it looks, look in a different direction. Now, does that sound like something a man who cares about Providence
Right.
and its citizens, is that something that that person would say? I
Yeah.
think not.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's certainly it doesn't appear to be any emotional attachment. You know, the notion that you could have stroked a $300,000 check to the city right up front as a sign of commitment and also a sign of support for a city that's cash impaired, that would have been tremendous. I can't read what is in their hearts. All I can look at is you've got a couple of organizations that are hell-bent to obfuscate, to prevent really a studied analysis of it, because all the information that they're going to provide is seemingly going to be provided at the very last minute with little or no opportunity for the type of extensive oversight and analysis that a project like this, relative to the size and scope and its importance in the immediate and ongoing future of Rhode Island, demands, simply doesn't seem capable of happening. You've got a professional marketing class that works for the state that seems unconcerned with even the most fundamental appearance issues going on right now. I don't know, does anyone out there give a damn?
Well, in fairness, I can honestly say that I think the response from the I-195 Commission, at least in the last month, is that they're not going to play these games anymore.
Right.
And remember, this entire debacle did not happen in a vacuum. It happened because the legislature insisted that it happen. And it's as simple as that.
There are so many parallels to what's going on with Invenergy, or what went on with Invenergy, this sort of fast and loose approach to the details, which bears a distinct resemblance to the stadium, where up until the bitter end we had no idea what the details were. And for all those who would say, well, this is a private business, well, again, they're running it off of taxpayer money. And say what you will about relative other types of similar investments in similar spaces, they're doing it on the back of government. Has anyone actually gotten a hold of, and it's been challenging for me, what the final tax incentives from the state are going to be on this?
I can't speak to that because I don't know. But again, I will say to you that subsidies are unfortunately a necessity in order for a state the size of Rhode Island to compete. And I may never convince you of that,
Yep.
but I will say to you, the governor has done good work here. Stephen Pryor at Commerce has done good work here. We have brought more good-paying jobs to Rhode Island than I have ever seen in my lifetime. I'm talking about six-figure jobs, okay? And we can make this work, We need to get a few breaks here and there, but the reality is that we can get this right. We must get this right.
Well, I think we're going to have, when the smoke clears from this, we'll have that conversation about subsidies.
Okay,
We'll agree to disagree on that.
all right, fair enough.
But we'll also agree that it's critically important to, if nothing else, the psyche of this town, so that we don't have a Lucy moment. That's a dated reference to cartoon.
The football,
Peanuts, yeah.
that's our era.
That's our era. But we don't have the rug pulled out from under us,
Yeah.
and that this not turn into something difficult. Is there any opportunity for public comment coming up soon? Or is that ship sailed?
The next the next I-195 meeting, if my memory is correct, there may be an opportunity for public comment then, because remember, that is still before the next important deadline, which is November 1st.
All right.
So there's really nothing to be discussed until then.
November 1st is,
D-Day.
okay. I'm so grateful for your support of the show, for your willingness to come down here and put into plain English that which seems to be lost in what I call government speak, as issues and challenges are tossed about and sort of like a gigantic ping pong match. I just need to remind people that lives are at stake, fortunes are made to be lost here, that there's a community that is extremely fragile, both financial and emotionally. And when I say emotionally, I mean in terms of a business climate is a very tenuous item. Folks who work in sales like I do can often come to work one morning and you feel the winds of change.
That is the truth.
Providence cannot afford another, let's just call it a boondoggle. I'm not saying this is one yet, but it's adopting some of the trappings of it. And we just, 38 Studios saw someone come in and successfully siphon millions of dollars from our economy. 38 Stadium had the opportunity to do so. Cooler heads ultimately prevailed. This has got the same potential, but every time this happens to this community, the long-term ramifications are serious and distinct. And so, Mr. Fane, it's time. And I think there's a lot of us who wish it would just go away. But at the same time, if in fact you're going to make quote-unquote good on this, then damn it, just do it.
Well, I'd say it's about time he needs to show it. We've had about all the talk and all of the missed deadlines and all of the disrespect that we're going to take.
Right. City deserves better. Regardless of where you stand on this issue, the city deserves better. We don't need headlines like this, that after a year and a half of this cathartic, emotional, expensive process, that all along it has the potential to have been a big lie. That will, folks constantly belittle the, Mark Patinkin had a piece in today's paper. Is Providence the city of no? No, I'm going to adapt that. Providence is the city of no more. If in fact someone comes to the table and says, I want to build this and I want to do it the right way, this city needs to throw those people a parade. It's a city of no more because we just don't need any more of this foolishness.
Correct. And frankly, we have had enough of listening to people like Mark get it wrong. Okay? We don't say no to everyone. We say no to the people who don't follow the rules.
Well,
we say yes to a lot of great people.
Mr. Patinkin, unfortunately for many, of course this is the realm of opinion, has become sort of the house organ, if you will, of the Providence Journal elite, who still think they've got a hand, they still think in shaping this community, and still think that they're actually relevant. The Providence Journal ceased being relevant sometime in the last year or so. What shred of relevance just went out the, and that's tragic. That's nothing to be celebrated for. There are a lot of good people who still work at the Journal. There are a lot of great people who were forced to have left. And the city is poorer for not having a truly independent paper.
Agreed.
But unfortunately, whether it be the stadium or any one of a number of interests, gambling, the Providence Journal seems to be following its rather challenged financial statements instincts, as opposed to at what point in time was one of the great American newspapers and was literally the AAA for organizations like the New York Times and the Boston Globe. Now, people are going to the Boston Globe from the Providence Journal for all the wrong reasons. They're fleeing it. And it's sad that the best newspaper reporting, that exists in when I mean newspaper, I mean that wretched ink-stained paper has to come from 50 miles north as opposed to Fountain Street.
But I'm here to tell you that right now, I think the Boston Globe is the best thing that has happened to Providence.
Oh, Mr. Fitzpatrick and his crew.
Amanda Milkowitz, I'm telling you, Dan McGowan,
Yep.
their offices are at Wexford, and you know what? People are paying attention to what they're doing and what they're saying.
Yep. No, I have.
And they're doing a damn fine job.
Yeah, I mean, Mr. McGowan has become something of a young legend for his shoe leather reporting on the city that never sleeps, La Prave, and all its multiple, scandals and challenges. Mr. Fitzpatrick brings, kind of a presence to the city in terms of editorializing that's been missing for quite some time. I'm not as familiar with Ms. Milkowitz's writing as I.
Great reporter, great investigative reporter.
But by and large, the very fact that folks with those kind of talents are paying attention speaks volumes.
It does.
But it also speaks volumes to the opportunity. Because the Globe doesn't commit this kind of money or this kind of effort if they didn't in fact think there was great opportunity in the city.
Correct.
So
Correct.
we're going to close out on a positive note.
We are.
Damn it. I hate when that happens.
Thank you again.
No, thank you. We're going to get this out to podcast right away. And, because now we're down to really, as folks in our generation would say, the brass tacks.
This is about the brass tacks.
Yeah. Now, I'm convinced it's all going to end up in a arm wrestling match somewhere down the street here. In an
If
office
that's the
building.
case, we will win that.
Excellent. Well, Sharon Steele. She's the executive in charge of the jewelry district. She has brought to the table tonight the culmination, if you will, of years of civic activism, a keen eye in the status of development in the city, a really positive aesthetic as it applies to the type of development that takes place in this city. And at the same time, I have to congratulate you on your courage because, it's one thing to be an activist. It's another thing to be an activist deep in the heart of your own personal career. And there are challenges, and I'm sure there have shots you've had to take as a result of that make it really a singular act of bravery to show your commitment to the city in this way. So
Thank you.
I applaud that.
Thank you.
We're going to take a quick break right now. We are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live here on the Worldwide Coalition Media Network here at the Go Local Live Broadcast Center, deep in the heart of the city we so love, the naked city, the city of, about 360,000 stories, I believe. We've told a few of them tonight. We will continue to. Facebook.com/The Coalition Radio, on the Mighty Mighty Twitter at Coalition_Radio, and of course the mothership, CoalitionRadio.us, where you can find links to our Liberty blog page, our YouTube page, our podcast page. Where can folks find your work?
Well, Building Bridges Providence has a Facebook page. Jewelry District Association has another one, and we are everywhere.
Excellent. And I spent some time down on the bridge last weekend, and I went to Plant City because I think that's one of the places to go to right now in La Prave. And there's between that and the flea market, have conspired to bring vitality to a plot of land for which none has existed in the entire time that I've lived here. So your vision is coming to fruition. And there's a connection now that has taken place between the quote-unquote financial district, Wickenden Street, Lower College Hill, RISD, that simply has never existed before.
It is stunningly beautiful. It is beyond our wildest dreams. I am there multiple times a day, and we get hundreds, literally from Thursday to Sunday in the evenings, 200, 250, 300 people on the bridge. The diversity is extraordinary. Every single neighborhood in the city is there and represented.
Right.
And it is just amazing. It is what public spaces are all about. It is what keeps cities alive.
Right. Excellent. Thank you so much. Folks, we'll be right back.